All right. Hi, everyone. It's Obi Abuchi here with the Leading From Your Core podcast and Vodcast. This show is dedicated to helping leaders all around the world discover leadership, wisdom, stories, and insights that will enable you to tap into the power of leading from the inside out. And I'm delighted to welcome on the show Lou Carter. Lou has 25 years experience in operations, in business coaching, and she's the founder and CEO of Rising Vibe, and she'll be talking more about just the meaning behind that, and has developed one mission to support well-being and performance by bringing organizational goals and human needs together. And that's something that really resonates with me. And ultimately, that's about being okay with not being okay. And she's also about building trust within organizations so that we feel safe to share how we really feel, and about helping people help themselves. And you'll soon see that Lou has boatloads of energy, gets right to the heart of issues, is unafraid to challenge, quick to inspire, and challenging that mindset to enhance our performance. So I am absolutely delighted to have Lou on the show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for having me. It's very exciting.
Cool. And so our listeners and viewers get to know you a bit more. And we are going to be talking about the power of mindset today. But tell us, how did you get into what you're doing now? And what's the story behind Rising Vibe as a name?
Okay, so I'll nutshell it. So operations, being an operator, I guess, is at my core. So being out on the front line with the people, started off in retail, moved into senior living. I've always just loved being with people. But I guess the bit that moved me into the world of change and learning and development, organizational development, was I found myself being attracted to, being appointed to projects where there was some resistance, people not in a great place, not engaging with the change, pushing back a little bit, because I really enjoyed it. And I don't mean I enjoyed, people not feeling great, but I enjoyed in a very curious way. I wasn't uncomfortable in terms of feeling intimidated and taking it personally. I just was very interested in it. So that moved me into the world of learning and development and organizational development. And I loved working in the corporate world. I didn't enjoy, never have enjoyed, still don't enjoy all the politics. I'm about being yourself. I absolutely buy into the need for hierarchy. Otherwise, decisions won't be made. Someone needs to be accountable. Sure. But actually, we're all human beings. We all experience very similar things. Just because you are more senior, it doesn't mean you are better. And I think that gets in the way quite a lot. So I would find myself often very frustrated by that kind of dynamic, and I would challenge it. And I guess I had a little bit of a reputation back then. And 20 odd years ago, I probably didn't manage it as well as I would now in terms of my approach. I have done a lot of learning myself over the years. But I knew I'd always want to get out of it and have my own business where I could support and challenge that, if that makes sense. So
sure.
I did that back in 2009, set up an organization called Bolt from the U, actually, with a business partner, which isn't completely different to Rising Vibe. But when Rising Vibe was born in 2017, that was really a very personal drive to help people in the workplace. And actually it does trickle outwards to, outside of work as well, just to be really honest about where they're at and how they're feeling. Because, I'm someone who suffered with extreme anxiety for years, didn't tell anybody. I have grown up and been surrounded by people who, because I've nurtured it, by the way, have a belief that I can deal with anything and nothing was bothering me. And I played that for a long time until it got to the point where actually I was having severe nighttime panic attacks. And I thought, I've got to do something about this. But I felt so much shame admitting that I was struggling. And it was on the back of the work that I did around that myself in 2016 into 2017 that meant I wanted to change the business and the brand to be really about that, be really overt about it. Rising Vibe's about feelings and emotions. And when we feel good, we'll do a great job, we'll be engaged. When we're not feeling good, we won't do such a great job, and we're more likely to resist, even if what we are being presented with is really helpful. Nutshell. So yeah, Rising Vibe was born in 2017. And the focus is really about, you talked about organizational goals and human needs. We absolutely need organizational goals, right? We all do. We need to know what's expected, what my deliverables, KPIs, objectives, critical. And actually, we know they're not always in place in an explicit way, but they're key. But we also need to look at human needs. So how are people feeling? How confident are they? What their confidence levels like? Do they feel cared about in the organization? Do they feel connected to the organization? Do they know what value they bring? We all have a innate need to bring value and make a difference. If you don't have both of those as a focus, you can do all right, for sure, and a lot of people are, and a lot of organizations are, but if you can bring the two together, it's really powerful. One without the other is not as powerful. And what we find is, and you'll know this, of course, is that the organizational goals piece is much more of a focus. The human needs stuff, not so much. I think on the back of pandemic, that has become more of a thing because people have been almost forced to, haven't they? Forced to focus a bit more on that. But yeah, that is kind of where I came from and why I am where I am now. I don't know if that was really nutshell, but it was.
Oh, well, it was great. It was great for just bringing out some of the key elements. I can imagine so many of the listeners who are leaders will resonate with the challenge of bringing together the organizational goals, recognizing that it's people that deliver those, and those people have emotions and feelings. And am I at my best? We know a lot of the stats around how engaged people are in the workplace. And a lot of that has to do with, how do I feel about being here? How do I feel about my team? How do I feel about my manager? How do I feel about my leader? And so you've touched on something that is absolutely critical for getting the most out of people. I couldn't help but think about it. And I know you talk about just your own energy and vibe, and just where are we operating out? What emotions are we feeling? And it really comes down to what sort of energy am I putting out as I go to work, right? And as a leader, how am I helping people to channel the right sort of energy and be honest about where they are and what might be getting in the way of them? So
yeah, I think what's interesting about I'm huge on language. I've got a bit of an obsession with language in terms of, I guess, when you think about your coaching style, anyone who is a coach will have something they hang their hats on in terms of that. And I'm a big language, hearing how people speak about themselves and other people. And I have a very, and Rising Vibe is all about this, avoiding binary language where we can, when it comes to energy, when it comes to emotion. So we talk a lot, don't we, about it's the right way, it's the wrong way. That's good, that's bad. And we hear negative and positive all the time. Mm-hmm. When it comes to emotion, and of course, our energy will come from how we're feeling. And when we label it in a binary way, it immediately puts pressure on people to be the right way, the good way, the positive.
Yeah.
And actually, I always use anger as an example. I do resentment quite beautifully. A lot of the time, it's one of my go-tos. It's one of the places I access quite a lot.
I love the ownership of that. Yeah, Lou. It's like, I do it beautifully.
Yeah, it's ugly, but I know I go there quite a lot. I'm aware of it, so I can work my way through it. But there is nothing wrong with anger. There's nothing wrong with resentment. There's nothing wrong with feeling rage, hatred. There's nothing wrong if in the moment, or even if a prolonged period of time, you don't want to be sat there for a long time, but there is nothing wrong with experiencing those emotions. They're completely valid. The important piece is, of course, how do I demonstrate how I'm feeling? And that can be very unhelpful or helpful. So if I'm feeling angry and I go at somebody verbally in a very aggressive way, or I'm physically aggressive, not okay, not okay ever. But feeling angry is okay. And I think what we've done is we've mixed up how does that manifest and how do you demonstrate it with feeling emotion? And so we've called it negative, positive. So people are less likely to accept and own You know, you just said I owned it beautifully, because I go, do you know what? I don't like the fact that I feel resentful quite easily. And I know where that comes from. I recognize my patterns, but I do experience it. But I know it's not wrong, which is why actually I feel okay owning it here. Whereas if I'm told experiencing any of that kind of stuff is not okay here, I'm not going to be honest about it. And I'll pretend I'm fine when I'm not. I'll pretend I understand when I don't. So we talk about high vibe and low vibe. You know, I'm feeling high vibe or I'm feeling low vibe. And usually we are in a state of what we call duality, which is high vibe and low vibe in the same context, which is completely normal and healthy. It's, you know, maintaining a purely high vibe state is impossible to stay there for any significant period of time, because you might be having a great day and you're feeling buzzy, and then something happens, either you're driving home or on the train, or you get an email and you're like, oh, and then you're going to be a little bit low vibe. That's normal, because remember, we're wired to scan for threat and look for danger, so we're going to have more unhelpful thinking than helpful thinking. It's just the way we're wired. So to expect people to be positive all the time, you know, I talk a lot about the positivity police. You know, there's nothing wrong with feeling low. The key is, of course, what are you going to do about it? So if someone's stuck there and not, I'm not talking you have to take immediate action. It depends what's happened and what's going on for you. But there's a big difference. And I think this is where sometimes people get confused with the work that we do. We're not saying someone comes into the workplace and is feeling despair, and you just let them feel despair for a year and they're not performing. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about that, because that's not, we have to run an organization. We want people to perform, but enabling that person the space to be able to articulate it, to help them help themselves, you know, so what might help you feel better, what support might you need, you know, holding them to account around what they said they're going to do, even if it's a 1% little improvement or baby step action they're going to take. Then hand on heart, if a year down the line they haven't done anything and you have supported them, that very uncomfortable conversation that most leaders, you know, we have had, where we have to have a different kind of conversation about someone not being in the organization. We can do that hand on heart with integrity, going, we know we did everything we could to support them to help themselves. They didn't do that. This is not a nice place to be, but I can sleep at night. You know, that for me is the bit. So we have to encourage, I think, I feel very, very strongly about it. Let's avoid binary language. Let's just talk about, is how you're feeling right now serving you well or not, in terms of how you're trying, what you want to achieve, what your outcome is, and is the way you're demonstrating it, is that helpful or not? Let's explore that, rather than it's not okay to be angry in the workplace.
Love it. I love it. And what a great question as well. And you've highlighted the difference between the experience of it and how it's important to be able to own all of our experience and all of our emotion and all of our feelings, and not label it as, you know, good, bad, but it's the demonstration that can be, that's where the damage can be done, right? It's, so I feel angry. I actually put out an article recently, which was a bit of a challenge. And I would say, you know, no more Mr. Nice Guy, and that if you're not angry, you can't be a great leader, because then you're stuffing things down. And actually it's that expression is fine, or the feeling of it is fine. It's about how you express it, right? As
Absolutely,
you're saying.
Yeah. And you know what, I always use the example of, so with high vibe emotions, let's say you are going into the workplace and you're having to communicate to the wider organization about a restructure. And we know that even if you have been through a few restructures in your career, and a lot of us have, who've worked in, you know, the corporate world for many years, you still will have a pang of fear. You know, what does this mean for me? If I go in to that meeting that I'm leading and I'm feeling elated and euphoric and joyful and excited, that's not actually going to help me connect with the people in that room in that moment. So we have this view that high vibe is good. Actually, is how you're showing up right now, supportive of what you want to achieve, and connecting with people. You know, empathy is about feeling with someone, isn't it? And how can you truly connect with people if you are in a completely different emotional state out of awareness? Both ways, actually. But of course, it's not about pretending. It's not about pretending you are, you know, pretending you are not buzzing when you are. It's about going, how do I manage this right now? Because walking into this room, and I'm in a great place because I know the restructure is really good for me and my team, but actually for the rest of the people here, it might not be. So I need to really manage that. It's not wrong either, but it's about how do I manage that? And I think as a leader, it's about self-management, not suppression, which is really different, isn't it? Suppression
Yeah,
is
yeah.
pretending it's not here. Management is it's there, and I need to think about how I demonstrate, my behavior. What behavior am I going to demonstrate right now that's going to serve me the best way in this situation, rather than pretending I'm not feeling something. It's a fine line between it. And I think a lot of people get it confused and stuff it away, to using your language, rather than going, okay, that's how I'm feeling. How do I manage it?
Yeah.
I think it's completely different.
Yeah. And how does this serve the situation? How does this serve people? How does this serve, the bigger need in this situation?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to connect all of this to mindset, and how does this all play out as a mindset? Because mindset, as you talk about, is critical. There's a power in the mindset that we bring to a specific situation. Even this example of, the mindset about, is this supporting me? Is this serving the team here? Is this serving the organization? So how do you connect mindset to feelings and emotions?
So the one statement, I mean, it's not the one statement, but in context of mindset, one of the statements that I get really frustrated with is when I hear people say, and I've heard it a lot throughout my career, and I know you would have done as well, and people listening to this would have done, which is, you just need to change your mindset. So, oh yeah, of course, yeah. Sorry, I'll just
brilliant. Thank you. Yeah.
Let me just pop to the loo, and I'll come back and have a different mindset. Okay. So I think the first thing is to really break down, what does it mean? Because mindset is bandied around a lot as well, isn't it? Just that frame, mindset. So the way we talk about it is our thought pattern, or our thoughts in any given moment. That is our mindset. And we don't have a categorized, we are a fixed mindset person, we are a growth mindset person, we are open, we are closed, we are all of those things. We are all of those things. I think that's really important, because my daughter came home from school a couple of years ago. She's 12, and she sat down and threw a bag on the side and said, "So, Mum, let me tell you, Miss, I can't remember her name, said I'm brilliant and I've always got a growth mindset." And I said, "Well, you haven't always got a growth mindset, Martha," which doesn't sound like inspirational parenting, by the way. But what I wanted to highlight was, what I wanted to say was, can I have a word with this teacher? Because it's suggesting you're a good girl and you've done well because you've got a growth mindset. Having a fixed mindset, having a growth mindset, it's not right or wrong, good or bad, the same thing. It's just being human. So the way that we talk about mindset is our thought pattern in any given moment. How we're thinking, what we're thinking about, impacts how we feel. Mm-hmm. So if I'm thinking right now about something outside of this conversation, which I'm not, by the way, so I'm just trying to think of, so I'm thinking about the fact I've got no food in the house. If I started thinking I've got no food in the house, which, by the way, is true, and I'm gonna have to go to shopping later. I don't really enjoy food shopping, so already I'm saying out loud to you what I'm thinking, and that's what happens. What we articulate, we are processing in some way. I'm going to feel irritated, which I do right now, by the way. I feel irritated.
Lovely demonstration.
Great reel in the moment. But because I'm thinking that, and I'm sharing with you what I'm thinking, that's why we are able to talk about it, because I'm sharing it. I'm feeling irritated. But normally I might just be sat here doing a few emails, then start thinking about having to get some shopping because I've got no food in and it's the weekend and I'll start feeling irritated. So my thoughts impact how I feel. My thoughts impact how I feel. And a great example for me is when we were hit by COVID on March the 13th, and it was like 11:30 in the morning. And I remember looking at my emails, and the whole of our pipeline fell out in a 90-minute period.
Wow.
So I was in a state of duality. I could have been stuck in low, but I think because of what I do and because I'm aware of it, I was mindful. But what was happening was I was in despair, because I was telling myself things like, well, the business is done. If my clients are pulling all the work, this is serious. This is a big deal. It's global. What if my clients don't recover? Who are my clients going to be? I'm going to have to start again. I'm the main breadwinner right now. What if I can't pay my mortgage? Like that.
Sure.
And I'm saying it out loud, but often we don't we don't say it out loud, we just keep it in here so it feels even more powerful, right? So whereas if we say it out loud, which is why coaching is so powerful for people, if we write it down, which is why journaling is so powerful, it loses a bit of power. It's still there, but it takes the pressure away. So I was in despair, but I was also bouncing into thoughts of, so what can I do about it? Who can I speak to? Who might understand what to do next? That kind of, so I was moving into a very clear, purposeful emotional state too. Does that make sense? So
Sure.
I was bouncing between the two, but it was, my mindset was bouncing from one of doom to one of hope. So it was my thoughts, my mindset in that moment that meant I was feeling very different things. Now, we don't have a fixed mindset, but we do have, I think it's around 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day. I think that the research shows us. And we are, I think it's wired around the ratio 5 to 1, where we will be looking for danger and problems. So we have to have, 5 experiences of some situation to override one that didn't feel so good. So the same is happening with our thinking. So we don't have fixed, but we have strong patterns, which means they feel fixed. So you might be somebody who naturally goes to, I can't. There are people who will go, well, I can't, it won't work. And they might be described as someone who's got a very fixed mindset, very closed. Actually, they've just got a very strong pattern of thinking around it won't work or I can't, probably because of loads of experiences throughout their lives that have just been reinforced because they'll look to reinforce them. But they can change it. They just need some ongoing support to change those pathways.
And just to cut in, sometimes it could be in a specific context, right?
Yes.
Because it might be a context of, hey, public speaking, I can't, but actually you put me on the sports field and I can, and I'm running all around. So
absolutely,
that speaks completely to the context. Yeah.
Yeah. So health-wise, I mean, it's got much better, but I used to have a lot of health anxiety. And I would really struggle to access anything remotely helpful with that. I've worked on that. My anxiety has dramatically shifted because of the way that I'm challenging my mindset. So when I notice I go to catastrophe, I'll say to myself, okay, the first thing is having to notice it. So that's about self-awareness, right? You have to know you're doing it. You have to be open and own that. And it can feel really uncomfortable and you feel a bit stupid and like you're going to be judged and a lot of shame, but you have to do that first. When I noticed that happening, I would immediately go to, okay, so what evidence have you got? What evidence have you got? And I would never have any because I'd be worrying about something that hadn't happened yet. And then I would think through, what's the best that could happen here instead? And that might take me not to the best place, but it would definitely shift me to a place of feeling less anxious, more hopeful and calmer. So I find the subject of mindset so interesting because it's talked about like it's a very set thing, your mindset. It's not. It's all over the place, but you will have patterns. And if you can work out which of those patterns is serving you well and which of those patterns is not serving you well, which comes from your narrative, which comes from your belief system, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You can change it, but you've got to want to change it. And we know some people don't want to, because actually looking for the worst case and saying I can't, actually for some people it keeps them safe.
Sure. Yeah. And that's it's there's a saying that I've got in my book, Leading from Your Core, that very often we want the convenience of growth without the inconvenience of change, and that change can mean I've got to move into a place that is unsafe for me, and sometimes those patterns just keep us safe, and therefore we don't want to put in the work of navigating the change. But I love how you just talked about some questions that just begin to open your mind to a different possibility of what that future could be. So one, there's being aware of the pattern, and then asking yourself questions that help you begin to see different possibilities rather than that same pattern.
Absolutely. And the other thing I think that has really helped me, and I know it helps a lot of my clients, is when I feel like I've really cocked something up, or I'm a complete failure, or I've made a huge mistake and I'm feeling some shame and I'm beating myself up about it. We can't change it, it's happened. I've had a lot of those in my life. Actually asking myself, okay, so what are you going to learn from it going forwards? What are you going to do differently next time as a result of that? Shifts how I feel dramatically.
Wow. Yeah.
And it sounds so simple and obvious, and you have to really be open to answering that question for yourself. But I have to say that has been life-changing for me. To something happens and it doesn't go as well as I wanted it to, or there's some feedback that's really been uncomfortable, or I've had a big ouch moment, or I think I've, hurt someone, and I'm really beating myself up. I often, not immediately, but not too long afterwards, I will say, well, what exactly happened there? What was my contribution? And I know that you talk about, about ego, and that is a great question. What's my contribution here? Not just what's my contribution to the stuff that's great, because of course you will be contributing to stuff that's great if you're part of it, but what was my contribution to that situation that didn't work? Was it all me if you're beating yourself up? Which part was me if you're blaming? Because that's quite uncomfortable as well. And what am I going to learn about that as a result? And therefore, what am I going to do differently going forwards? That has changed things hugely for me. And by the way, as I'm saying it out loud to you, I recognize there's quite a few things I say, what am I going to change going forwards? And I don't always nail that the first time. There's a few things spring into my head that I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't quite done that differently yet. But it's a great, I think they're great questions. I think they're brilliant questions.
That is a great question. I mean, I find myself right now, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking of a number of areas for myself and think, okay, so Obi, what can you learn in that? And I love how you call out the feeling of shame so quickly and easily, because it's something that we don't talk about enough, that actually I do feel there is a sense of shame. It was something I've shared this story a few times. I think most of the listeners have heard, but in 2012, 2013, it was when I released my first book, and yet the market was probably similar to what we have right now. It was devastating. It wasn't quite a COVID impact, but the market crashed. All of the opportunities disappeared. And so on the one hand, I'm celebrating the release of my first book, The Magic of Monday. But on the other hand, we're paying our mortgage on the credit card in the red. And I'm feeling this intense shame that I couldn't build this business. And it was really hard to admit it. I had suicidal thoughts. I mean, it was a really dark place. Eventually, thank God, eventually I get through it. But being able to ask that question at some point, okay, Obi, what can you learn from this? But what I had to do was get through that feeling of shame in the first place before I could even ask the question, what am I going to learn? And because I just felt bad. And I think that's something that in a lot of situations, there's that feeling of, oh, but I shouldn't have done this. And I feel like just a real idiot and broken person for messing up this project or messing up this client or messing up this recruitment, whatever the case may be. And so we then see ourselves as bad. And that's the whole thing about shame, right? Yes. Guilt is, hey, okay, did something that didn't quite go to plan, and so I can learn from it. But shame is when we put it on ourselves. And so we think, oh man, I'm a mess up. But what I love about that question is, okay, what am I going to learn? It makes me think, I can still grow through this. Obi, we're all work in progress. We're all developing. We all make mistakes. What can you learn, and what can you do differently the next time? And then I'm no longer feeling as broken and as bad as that shame mindset.
Completely. Shame, we take shame on identity. It's like it becomes, I am something that actually is not kind, not helpful. And we take it on at our core, we go, I am a failure, not I failed at that. I am a failure. It's huge. And I think the ego gets in the way of us owning our shame. It's hard, especially when maybe you've nurtured, because we unfortunately do a lot of the time, nurtured a persona or a role where, you know, either, you know, you are successful and you never get anything wrong and you're very confident and nothing bothers you. And if you've nurtured that, and then to own that feeling is even harder. And I work with a lot of people who really wrestle with that, or have had big things happen to them in their lives, and as a result of that, they go, oh yeah, nothing bothers me anymore, nothing bothers me anymore. And it's like, well, of course things still bother you, because you you know, it's like, what you experienced was awful, and you've come back from that, but to now suggest nothing therefore bothers you anymore, again, is and it's really disconnecting for people to be around that.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm Superwoman, nothing bothers me. So why would anyone, especially in this kind of work, then connect and open up and share with you what's going on for them when they've got someone in front of me who is someone in front of them who's portraying to have it all together and have all the answers and never be bothered, never be impacted. It's not helpful, like so unhelpful.
Yeah. You've come to this term a few times, and I just want to call it out for our listeners and viewers, just being human. And I think what the work you're doing, the work I do, the work in coaching, it is actually about connecting with our humanity at its best, but also with the struggles and the brokenness of it. Because this idea of being a Superman and Superwoman is often, it's about stripping ourselves of that humanity. I don't feel, I'm imperceptible to challenges and I'm invincible, and actually no, you're not, right? So we have an amazing capacity for resilience, an amazing capacity for growth, but we've also got an amazing capacity for struggle too, and navigating that and being honest about that helps us to connect with people, helps us to inspire, helps us to release those stress and pressure valves, but move forward. And I think I know this for myself, that I feel that I'm, without realizing it, I'm at my weakest when I'm trying to deny my humanity and deny my ability to feel and deny my just that, this got to me, this hurt, this is challenging, this is difficult. And when I deny that, I think I'm stronger, but actually I'm weaker and hurting myself.
And you can't be resilient. You know, resilience is talked a lot about, right? Like mindset, resilience. We need to be more resilient here. You need to change your mindset. The way that we talk about resilience is getting a break, you know, having a break, being able to bounce back from the unhelpful thinking. I've laid on a beach. I've laid on a beach for 2 weeks in the past, not felt remotely refreshed, rejuvenated, relaxed, because I've been wearing loads of unhelpful stuff.
Yes.
So it's about, and so that question, what can I learn from this? What will I change going forward? Is a way of breaking the pattern of unhelpful thinking and having a period of resilience, of rest, so you can come back from an experience that wasn't great. Doing what you've just talked about, you know, going, no, I'm fine, it's not, but you're not getting a break. You're not allowing yourself to feel what it is that you need to feel, take a breath, and then bounce back. You know, there's a lot of people in, you know, what we call endurance, which is, this is constantly worrying, unhelpful. I'm not admitting what I'm really thinking and feeling. I'm pretending I'm okay. Endurance, which is exhausting, and you will get ill. You will get ill. So how do you, what do you need to do? And some people will absolutely go down the, I would say, when I say traditional, what I mean by traditional route, people talk a lot about yoga, meditation, that kind of thing. It works for some people. It doesn't really work for me. What works for me is going for a long dog walk on my common, which is beautiful, either just walking on my own or with listening to a podcast, because I'm listening to that in nature and I'm having a break from whatever it is I'm worrying about. You know, for me, it's working out hard on my Peloton, because in that moment, all I can think about is how long is this going to go on for? I've got no thoughts in my head in that moment, because I'm just thinking about, you know, getting through it and the music and the. So I think we have to also challenge, what does taking a break look like, because it can be very different for different people. And some people will go and do, for me, meditation, I'm getting better, but when I am really worried about something, being completely still and silent just makes it worse for me.
It puts the spotlight on it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that, Lou. I feel like, hey, there's so many nuggets that you have shared already. I love this idea of, hey, don't be so binary about the emotions and the feelings, just being clear about it. It's all meant to be felt. It's really comes down to the demonstration. I love the emphasis on our mindset and being clear. It's not, hey, growth fixed, but it's the patterns, and are those patterns serving me? And even this talk about resilience, right? How do we take a break from those thoughts and focus on something else rather than let it go on in the background? And the reality is that we're not even aware. As you said, we got 70 research says about 70,000 thoughts, and we're only aware of about 5% of that, if that, in a day. So how do we break that?
I think what we need to do, I think if I was in charge right now and I had one thing I could do that I think would help humanity, it would be teach children to self-coach. Teach children to not just do the academic. It's important, of course it is. But what we've just talked about, when they feel rubbish, when they feel sad, they allow themselves to feel that. They're more concerned with how they're feeling than I've got to suppress that and be kind to other people, because that's a lot of the messages in schools. Be kind to others, and just learn to ask yourself questions like we've just talked about from a really young age. What might help me feel better right now? What support can I control that or influence it? What support might I need? That didn't feel great. What can I learn from it? What will I do different going forwards? I mean, can you imagine if we all could do that? If that became the way that we functioned from a very young age, I think we would have a completely different, the workplace leadership would be a completely different world. But I just think people would suffer less with anxiety, mental health and well-being wouldn't be such a thing. If everybody did that and everyone was allowed to take some time to, do you know what, can you give me 10? Because I just need a little bit of self-coaching before I go into this meeting. Of course, like if that was normal, I think that would be phenomenal.
Well, brilliant. I was going to ask you for a wrap up, but I think that was a perfect one there. So thank you. And some great questions. Anyone listening, watching, just rewind and go back. Those are some very simple questions that will help you tap into this incredible power of your mindset. Love it. Lou, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your wisdom and your energy. It really has been great.
Thank you for having me. I've loved it. Loved it.
Thank you. And to all our listeners and viewers, as I said, hope you enjoy the show. Remember that if you want to be a courageous and resilient leader, if you want to live life on purpose and with purpose, then it starts from the inside out. And you have the power within you to leverage these questions and get the most out of your day. So have a wonderful day, everyone, and see you on the next show. Bye-bye.